So we're going to talk about money, specifically how to raise money to do a project that you want to do. So we're the three panelists. Why don't we introduce ourselves and what kind of money we have experience with, because there's different kinds of money.
All over the place. So I'm David Boyles. I'm a technical evangelist at Microsoft. I'm a New York transplant, now living in Philadelphia, but working for a company in Seattle. So I'm all over the place. I had a startup in New York before this. It was still in technology, but I was installing high-end audiovisual systems for like very wealthy people before I went into programming. So now I feel terribly overdressed today, because normally I'm in like a t-shirt, a hat, and sandals and programming from home. But we get lots and lots of pitches for people trying to get onto the Microsoft platform in some way, usually Xbox. And very similar conversation we're going to have today. It's not always about money with us, because very seldom does Microsoft offer money for games to come on the platform. It's more about getting the devices and the consoles and getting on there. But we'll discuss Kickstarter, I'm sure, what the games industry looks like and what they're looking for as well.
So my name is Ryan Glenn. I'm Director of Statewide Initiatives for an organization here in Pennsylvania called the Ben Franklin Technology Partners. We're actually a network of 4 independent nonprofits specifically focused on gaming, but the principles in terms of who we look for, what we look for, are really similar across the board. So one of the things that Dave, right? Dave mentioned about getting on the Microsoft platform, getting on the Xbox, that'd be something that we would look at as a positive signal for potential investment into a company.
All right, my name is Luke Peterschmidt. I'm on this panel because I do a lot of things with crowdfunding, particularly Kickstarter. I've been involved in almost a dozen campaigns that I've run or run for someone else, and they've all funded, all in the tabletop space. But I know the folks on Kickstarter on the other side, the computer game side, and I've helped friends raise literally millions of dollars on Kickstarter. I want to just so we get terms right. Early seed money, like in the general old school fashion, you start a company, you borrow money from your parents or yourself, then you might get early seed money, which is money really, really early, and it's not a bunch of money. This would be like any of those tech startup like places you go live.
Right, in like a commune with everybody else.
Well, so one of the companies that we actually invested in is Digital Dream Labs, and they went through our accelerator program at Pittsburgh, and that program is pretty standard. But we actually have them come in from outside the area. It's a group of people that all come into Pittsburgh. They receive $25,000 to essentially live on for about 3 to 4 months to try to develop the platform that they're working on. And then out of that, what our goal is to get them to a point where they have enough traction to then attract some type of follow-on funding, from an angel investor or from a venture capitalist.
Yeah, so friends and family, self, seed money or early money. Angels are are single people who take an interest in what you do, but they're professional level investors. They're investing because they believe they're going to make money when you make money somehow. Venture capital are people spending someone else's money. So a venture capital fund is created, lots of money is put in it, and people manage that fund and they decide who gets the money. Those numbers can raise into the tens or hundreds of millions of dollars, depending on how you do that funding. So of all the processes there's a process for submitting that we can talk about. Kickstarter skips a lot of that, which is why it's been kind of disruptive. If you kickstart a product, you say, this is how much money I think I need, please give me some money, and if you do get the product. Anyone bought anything on Kickstarter here before? So I bought these shoes on Kickstarter.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, fantastic shoes too.
They actually came out.
Yeah, they came out by a company in Boston. I know they're all scuffed up and shiny. Company in Boston, they wanted to create a micro shoery. It's like a micro brewery, but for shoes. And they said, people like shoes that look like this, but they're all uncomfortable, so they came from the shoe industry, and it's all athletics on the inside.
Oh, nice.
It feels like a tennis shoe.
I can use some of that.
They're really nice shoes.
There's conferences, right?
Get into women's heels.
Right? Yes.
There's a wide open market there.
Yeah.
So the idea is they wanted to start a company, and they didn't go the standard route. And I'm not suggesting Kickstarter is superior in any way, but what helps in Kickstarter, where some of you might have a challenge if you try that, is you don't have a reputation that you've completed stuff yet if you're new. Right? These guys came from the shoe industry, and they said, we want to branch off on our own. You can trust us, because we have 60 years of shoe experience. I left the tabletop, I was in the tabletop industry for 15 years before I did my first Kickstarter. So I had a level of trust. For you in computer games, if you wanted to go that route, you would have to show that you could get it done. So you'd need to show good looking work. So a reasonable path, early seed money for 3 months, And then you could skip all the rest of those things and go right to Kickstarter. Again, not suggesting that's right for your, whatever your thoughts are. So how does someone get into your cycle of funding?
So for Alpha Lab, which is our accelerator in Pittsburgh, we do 2 classes per year. We call them cycles, and the application process is pretty standard. And anybody can apply. You can go to the Alpha Lab website and apply to be entered in. It's almost like applying to college. So you're essentially applying to enter this accelerator program, in a specific location. So you may not have heard of Alpha Lab, but you may have heard of TechStars or Y Combinator, or some of the other very well-known accelerator programs in the country. Alpha Lab would be very similar to that. And we actually receive literally hundreds and hundreds of applications for each of the classes that we accept into that program. And so we're very highly selective. We take somewhere between 10 and 15 companies per cycle. And some of the things that we actually look at that Luke mentioned is we want to be able to see that you have traction, that you can get it done. So we look at your management team very closely, or your development team, and say, do you have experience in the field that you're trying to apply for? So in the case of gaming, do you have computer programming or gaming experience where you've actually demonstrated a track record to be able to deliver on the product that you say that you're trying to create? That's probably our first and foremost criteria. We want to know that you as an individual or you as a team can actually deliver on what it is that you say that you're going to try to create. And then secondly, we also take into consideration and look at what is the market opportunity, or what are some of the other downstream opportunities from what it is that you're trying to create.
But your track record isn't always going to guarantee success, right?
Absolutely not.
It's just going to help mitigate some of that risk.
Yeah.
And I should say, on that money train of early and angel VC, the most risk is taken by the earliest money. By the time late venture capital gets involved, they're there to help you grow your business sometimes, to fulfill orders you might already have.
Yeah. Or even following that new Wing Commander game that's coming out, Robert Space Industries.
Yeah.
What was that game called? Star Citizen, right? So most successful Kickstarter, at least for games, is like 45 million raised there, and now they're at about 90 million raised for venture funding.
Yeah,
it is absurd how much money they're getting for this. And now, at least from the outside, it's slowly starting to implode because they're kind of all over the place. But same thing, they created groundbreaking games over 20 years. And whether it does or does not take off at this point, nobody knows, but they have $90 million, and there's still very little to show 2 years down the road. So now people are starting to get a little concerned. So even with the track record, helps out a lot, but then after a couple of years, people start to, we got to see something, right?
So how would somebody go about getting an idea of theirs onto your platform?
Their best bet really is to start creating it. So as silly as that sounds, we worked with someone like PHL Collective, group of recent Drexel grads. They're in Philadelphia, and they said, I want to get on to Xbox One. I said, the Xbox One operating system is nearly identical to Windows 8. This is about a year ago. I said, create a Windows 8 game, and then we'll pitch it back to this ID at Xbox team. So they created a game, put it in the store, brought it to ID, and right away they played it at a party one day and said, this is awesome, let's do it. Because they didn't have to really pitch anything at that point, right? The product spoke for itself, it was already done. There was no exchanging of papers and saying, here's our idea. They said, well, this thing is already done, we're just simply porting it at this point. But really what they can do is go to xbox.com/dev, and that's the best way to get started. But again, already having something, regardless of which platform you're on, is what's going to help you out for any of these platforms. Right? You want to go to Wii U, PlayStation, Xbox, it's all going to be largely the same process, and that's come up with something and then showcase it.
Once a team or a game or a product gets approved for the Xbox platform, even one of the other Microsoft platforms, and it's starting to be developed, do you see that as, do you have experience with those developers and ask them, okay, you've been approved now, how are you going to fund the actual creation of what it is that you're developing here? Because being approved is one thing, but then they actually have to produce the product.
Right.
Yeah,
it's hard.
So I'd be curious to know if your endorsement or approval helps them on the other side with funders or with...
I'd imagine definitely so. So there are different tiers of a lot of these platforms, like PlayStation and Xbox, both operate very similarly in that once you're through, that's kind of like helping with your momentum and boosting things along the way, right? Because there's only I don't know what numbers I can and can't say, so I'll play it safe. I'll say there's a lot of developers with our dev kits now. We give out 2 of them to every team who comes in. But the fact that we're willing to trust you enough to give this to you and not everybody else helps lend credibility to your project. So we don't peek into where you're getting your funding from. That's your own thing. But we'll follow up along the way because we want you to be as successful as possible, right? Just like any platform or stake owner, the more money that you generate from your game, the more money that goes back to Microsoft. So it's in our best interest to help you create the absolute best product. And it's much easier, I'm sure you see this, to retain talent than it is to go out and keep finding a new talent. So if people are making money and great products, you want to keep working with those developers too.
And I know that, I'm not sure where Microsoft is because they sort of change their cycle sometimes, but I know that Sony right now is still doing partial funding for some projects, where a developer will come to them and say, hey, we have this thing, can you help us with some amount of money while we finish? And if the team is trusted, and they've shown something, in fact, the game downstairs, Dragons for Soup?
By Grimm Brothers.
Grimm Brothers. Yeah, that's a PlayStation game where they got, I guess, to a certain point, and then, now they had worked with Sony for a long time, so they have a whole lot of trust.
The Indie Pub Fund, that's what they call it. Yes.
Yeah, so sometimes indies can get funded by, I know Ouya tried this, but.
Yep, and that turned into a debacle.
Oh my god, it was terrible.
You're very well informed about all this, I like it.
Yes, Ouya, Kickstarter, tried to kickstart their own platform.
Saw that coming a mile away.
Great idea. But they were one of the few companies that raised money on Kickstarter, and they used that to raise even more money outside of Kickstarter.
Yeah, definitely.
So they raised it.
Yeah, so what are your thoughts on that? Do you see any backlash from people on the outside when they'll try to raise money, maybe $1 million for a minimum viable product, as a proof of concept, all right? And then do you find that people feel cheated when they realize, oh, that's not enough to make this game, they have to go outside to get more funding?
Yeah, so I'm going to take off my I know everyone at Kickstarter hat, and I'm going to say Kickstarter will tell you they're not a store.
Right.
They're a store. They're a place you go to buy things with pre-orders.
Okay,
that's
that's point. I'll bring it up later on.
That's what you do. You go to Kickstarter and I say, I want shoes. I wasn't giving this guy $200 to help his company, just like buy a couple pairs of shoes. And then he rewarded me like PBS does with a mug when you give money to,
So it's very different. You're pre-ordering and not investing, because investing implies that you are then receiving money in exchange. Right?
Yes. So I'm not a tax expert or a legal expert. I'm a game designer. But I will tell you that, and it's unsettled tax law. I don't want to get into super specifics. But my personal accountant says, of course they're pre-orders. Book it as early revenue. Pay taxes on it when you ship, just like you would at a website. Other accountants have taken a different tact. I should also say that a law was passed 3 years ago that allows for crowdfunding of equity, which is new. It used to be that if you wanted to be one of those angel investors, there was a legal requirement that your net worth was $2 million or higher, with $500,000, I think, of cash, of liquid assets. They changed that. So now you can crowdfund for equity. The problem is all the regulations around the law haven't been ironed out yet. They're almost there. The lawyer who's doing it is the guy that used to work with the Coast with me, Brian Lewis. So he's almost done. But when that happens, you can actually crowdfund for equity, which means buying stock in the company basically before it launches, and then using that round as angel investors. And if the product's a hit, you make money.
Right.
You get paid.
And you, as the initial person giving funds,
you become the early stage investor. So you own equity in the company.
Yeah.
So the barrier to invest has been dropped dramatically, but the regulations aren't done yet.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's ever going to work.
Yeah, I'm still curious about that too. Because I seen that brought up recently, and I thought, I'm like, some people might be for it, some people might be against it, but the amount of red tape you have to go through to get any of that done is still got to be an absolute nightmare.
Well, they're gonna change. I mean, the red tape is going to be eliminated, and I think what you'll see actually is a TV show eventually. It'll be Shark Tank.
Yeah.
Where you can call in and invest money.
Yeah.
I should make that show. That'd be awesome.
Well, there are like online services. I forgot what it's called, like Lendtree or something like that. I'm probably butchering the name. Where me as a private individual, I can offer money up to give to other people, right? And I get a percentage back. So it's like a private loan that I give to somebody else, trusting that you're doing the right thing. So it's very risky on our behalf. We're going to live out our personal funds, but at the same time, it could be an excellent return on your investment too.
And not legal in every state.
Right.
Legal in some states.
Yes.
It's actually the same with crowdfunding right now. With equity crowdfunding.
Equity crowdfunding.
Yeah, there's 38 or 40 states that have approved intrastate, meaning within their own state, crowdfunding laws. So as long as you're in that state as an entrepreneur and you're only soliciting investments from other investors in that state, they have their own laws that apply.
Okay.
As soon as you cross state lines, it becomes illegal.
So the
because-
internet becomes difficult to work with,
Yeah.
I'd imagine.
Yeah, so Pennsylvania is not one of those states,
Yeah.
unfortunately, so you cannot crowdfund in Pennsylvania at this point.
So what kind of questions do you guys have for us? We could talk all day, and I'm interested in talking to you guys all day. 'Cause we do kind of similar stuff. Are you guys looking to make games and raise money for them? Are you looking to, what are you looking for? Anybody? Questions for, yes?
I have a question. So a lot of organizations will come to us looking for, they might have $10,000 and they're looking for funding. And I work for a nonprofit, so we try to align them with different funding opportunities. But we often will try to encourage them to use the minimum amount of money that they have to create a small prototype. You were talking, about having a product, being able to bring something. When you're evaluating things, I mean, is there obviously there's a certain level of polish and the idea itself, but is that advice that's good advice to be giving these organizations in terms of they have not enough to build a full game experience, but they want to entice more funders?
Okay.
I mean, are we directing people in the right?
So I think you're asking about a vertical slice,
Yeah.
right?
So I would say absolutely. I think having a minimum viable product that you can show to a potential market and solicit feedback from is extremely valuable from our perspective, because having something on paper and saying, I think this will work, and these are the people who I think will be interested in buying it. I mean, ultimately, you gotta have somebody who's gonna buy it.
Yeah.
And having a theory about that is one thing, but having a product that you can then take to a market, even if it's an organization like us who would be interested in even stepping in and helping you to take it to the market evaluation process. But bringing something that you can sit down and say, I was able to do this with this amount of money. That's very credibility building with an organization like us.
Yeah, if you're new and you want to go crowdfunding, you have to be able to show something that you've done. And even if it's just a video that's not even real for Kickstarter, you could be showing some screen capture you did and someone mashing buttons and they're not actually playing the game, but it's giving someone an idea that yes, you can complete the product. I think
A
what you're doing is,
trailer video as opposed to an actual interactive experience.
yeah, I think it's critical. And for a lot of these things, you see hits in Kickstarter or from other funding, and you think, wow, they had this idea and got lucky. It's never that way.
Right.
Before I launch Kickstarter, I spend 3 to 4 months getting not just feedback on the product, but getting people to interact with it, so that when I launch it on day one, there's a bunch of people lined up ready to hit go and fund it. So it's never luck. You might think it is, Floating Kittens comes out and everyone's like,
Right.
wow, I had this crazy game, raise $8 million for a card game. Oh, they happen to be
They
the
did market
illustrators.
research before,
Yeah, they were-
experience. They worked with friends.
Illustrators are the most popular webcomic online. Oh, that probably helped.
Yeah.
That they used as
A little bit of an audience there.
So companies that are downstairs showing their game are doing exactly the right thing if they have a minimum viable product. They're showing it, they're saying, world, this is what it is. Maybe they're listening to feedback, maybe they're not, but at least they're showing people they exist,
Yeah.
which is mandatory.
Yeah, because everyone says, I have the next best idea. I can't tell you how many pitches I get for this. Even before I came to Microsoft, I started this Unreal Engine developer group in Manhattan when I lived there. We worked out of the office I was working at. So at night, 5 p.m., everyone would come in. I'll never forget, there was someone coming in there one day. He said, oh, I can't show you my game or my idea. Here's what it was. I can't show you my idea until you sign this NDA. I was like, I don't do that.
You're done.
Yeah. And then, so after weeks, he kept coming. Finally, he just showed us. When he showed us his idea, it had been out for years already. He had no idea. And I saw the same thing at AOL. So AOL at 50 Broadway, or 550 Broadway in New York, they had a pitch night there. Once a month, people could go. 3 teams get to go, pitch in front of an audience, and then we have 5 minutes of explaining, 5 minutes of Q&A. I will never forget the look on these 3 young guys who went to go show their product. It was like a rewards-based app on the iPhone. And they're like, yeah, we've not shown anyone until this point. The app looked very nice and very quick. But everyone said, this has been out for years. They had not done any research, never looked. They just worried about making this product and never showcasing to anybody, thinking someone's going to steal our idea. Whatever idea you have, I can nearly assure you someone else has already thought about it. You've got to figure out what your angle is for that idea. So having a piece of paper saying, I'm going to come up with an online store where people can give me money to create products, like Kickstarter, people have thought of that idea for years, but the execution is the hard part, right?
Yeah, 3 things to make a product: an idea, the ability to execute, and money.
Yeah.
And of those, the least important is the idea.
Right.
And it sounds, I mean, I have friends and I will agree with them. Ideas have no value.
Right.
Right, they don't. And it hurts when you're younger in particular because you think this is the only idea you may ever have. And I'm just here to tell you, you will have one.
You will have a
constantly.
notebook
Yeah.
of ideas.
Of piles
Yeah.
and piles and piles of ideas. The trick is figuring which one to put your passion behind and follow. And you'll only find out which one's great by telling other people.
Yeah.
And you know, maybe someday you'll tell someone and some bizarre thing will happen, and through some chain of bar conversations, it'll get to somebody else and they'll make that thing. Okay, it was still worth the risk. It was still worth the risk of telling people what you were working on.
Definitely. You working in a silo helps nobody.
Yeah. What you want is someone to say, I had an idea just sort of similar, but we did this. And then you go,
Yeah.
we should work together on this project.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't worry about ownership, just make stuff.
So I couldn't agree more. An interesting data point that kind of backs that up is Google was actually the 99th search engine that received venture capital funding. Not just idea for search engine, but actually received venture capital funding. And Google won because they executed far better than any of the predecessors. So the idea really doesn't have a lot of value. And I would really, to follow up the question on what you should be doing or telling people to get to help get funding, I would really encourage folks to bring people around them that have experience in the sector that you're trying to penetrate. So if you can navigate and find some people who have done it before, even if you haven't done it, and bring them into your network in some capacity, whether it's a mentor, an advisor, or a board member, or bring them onto your team, that builds your credibility within the industry and with potential funders.
And I'll tell you, the gaming industry is the best in the world for this. We will share secrets with everybody, and we do it all the time. When I do panels about crowdfunding at gaming conventions, I am literally helping a bunch of people compete with my company.
Yeah.
And I don't care. Like, that's not the point, right? Our products that succeed and fail based on if they're good or not. And it should never fail because, I'm sorry, your product failed because you paid too much for shipping. Of course I'm going to tell you the cheapest way to ship your product. I'm not going to hold that information back like some weird secret.
Yeah, but sharing these secrets, like how you get better and they get better, and you're learning from them and sharing. At the post-mortem we saw this morning, right? Like every time you share that stuff, you're learning from your own experiences, and people are learning from you, and then you can point back to that, and then that may have helped somebody who then comes and helps you. So it's like a reciprocal relationship for everybody involved.
You work for panelist?
I am.
Hello.
Excellent. We have a late guest to the show. Tell us about your new movie.
My new movie. My new movie is Smooth Moving Traffic coming up from DC. So my apologies for being
No
late.
problem.
That's actually not a new movie. That's a
It's a
rerun.
rerun.
It runs every day. Yep.
It's like episodes of MASH. So explain to these fine folks who you are and what you do.
Hey, so I'm Cynthia Traeger. I'm the CEO of Pacific. We're a technology holding company. I've been in business since 1989. Became a holding company in 2006. I'm a trustee to Harrisburg University. And I also direct the Founders Institute in Washington. And FI is the world's largest idea stage accelerator in the world. We're in 100 cities around the world. I support the programs obviously in DC, but in Paris and Bogota, Medellin, Santiago. We have a relationship with the U.S. Department of State through the Global Innovation through Science and Technology program, and I am FI's champion for just around the world. I was invited by the White House this past summer to speak at the Global Entrepreneurship in Kenya and act as a moderator. I spoke at the GES in Morocco. So I spent a lot of time, Morocco this past December, I spent a lot of time with entrepreneurs, idea stage, founders and CEOs. I have 108 portfolio companies in our
Can you explain
portfolio.
what idea stage is?
So idea stage is, I think I've got a great idea about something I want to be able to bring to market.
We were just talking about this.
Yes.
Perfect timing.
Let's move it from idea to a reality. And within FI, we do it in about 14 weeks. And you go from an idea to a legally incorporated entity before you leave our program. So,
Awesome.
and I just did a panel for the MIT Enterprise Forum on idea stage.
You're up in Boston.
Actually, it's the DC extension
okay.
of that program.
I
But
may
we
have
just
just
did a
missed it.
workshop last week on idea stage stuff with 30 entrepreneurs who all have ideas. So.
And so when they leave there, then they start looking for angel or venture money?
It depends. So I would say we have a mix. In the programs that we run in Silicon Valley, I'd say almost everybody is going after investment. Programs that we run elsewhere in the U.S. And sometimes around the world, most of our entrepreneurs are bootstrapping.
Oh, all right. Bootstrapping using your own money, that very, very first step we talked about.
Is it a residency-based program or virtual?
It's not virtual, so there's a mandatory requirement. We meet weekly during the program stage, and depending upon where it's run worldwide, my program runs for 14 weeks. Some of them run for 16 or 17 because they take a break in between, but it's a real intense program. Generally, we like to have anywhere between 25 and 30 founders come into the program. We put them into groups of 4, 5, or 6. There's a leadership component to it. There's mandatory working groups that they have to do outside of our program time. Most programs meet once a week in the evening, and it's about 20 hours of work beyond that. I have 86 CEO mentors in my program who are functioning CEOs. Some of them have IPO'd, some of them have cashed out, some of them are running venture-backed companies right now. And for every topic that we have, whether it's fundraising, whether it's marketing, whether it's product development, customer validation, whatever it is, we have 3 CEOs that come in and work with each of our teams for about 3 to 4 hours once a week. And then they have access to all of those mentors.
So a lot of sharing of ideas then.
A lot of sharing of ideas. And we rotate people through the groups
Yep.
once or twice during the program, so everybody gets a shot at leadership. Everybody gets a shot at group work.
Are they working out of like an accelerator, so one building together?
No.
Okay.
FI spun up a venture fund, Expansive Ventures, about this time last year, and they do incubate those folks that are going through that fund, but all of the programs run independently. So we don't have co-working space, we're not giving you funding, you pay to participate. The thing that's different from the FI program than a lot of other everyday accelerators or incubators is that we have a very high survivability rate.
Okay.
About 86.5% of the folks that come into our program are still in business and employing people a year, 2, 3, 4 years
Wow.
after. So our program in DC has been running for 5 years. We didn't run a program last year for some technical reasons. The woman who runs the program with me ended up with a brain tumor, so we decided to take a break. But the program has been going strong for 5 years in DC. So.
All right.
That sounds fantastic.
Yeah.
If you have ideas,
Hey,
talk to me about it.
We haven't brought up like co-working spaces and incubators and accelerators. Would you mind covering that so we could help explain to everyone like how that works or that there are spaces they can actually work out of?
So there, it's my understanding that there's actually going to be a co-working space up here.
Yeah.
But
Hereby, I think in this building, I think one of the floors is going to be built out as a co-working space.
Are you familiar with the space, like co-working spaces or accelerators?
So it gives you a space where you can come in, use it as office space, use it as idea space, shared conference facilities, etc. But more importantly, it gives you a venue where you can talk to other founders, CEOs, entrepreneurs. You know, when I started my first company in 1989, there was no one I could talk to, and I mean no one. No female entrepreneurs, no CEOs I could just pick
There's
the
no
phone
Reddit
and
you
say,
can go on and ask questions.
yeah, no forums, no.
Maybe
none of that
BBS
stuff.
a couple years later.
None of that stuff. And so today, if you're not talking to other founders, other entrepreneurs about what's going on, how you're doing it, hiring, firing, slicing up the pie, finding investors, all of that stuff, you're probably not doing it the right way. And so a co-working space gives you the opportunity to meet fellow founders and conduct your business, but more importantly, socialize. The business of being in business.
Yeah. And save a lot of money on rent too.
And save a lot of money on that.
Yeah.
And get out of your house.
Yeah.
Like for those of us who've ever had a home office, after
That's
a while,
me right now.
you realize you're way too close to your refrigerator and you need to get out.
So I'm a big proponent of baking it up in the garage or in your house. I'm a huge proponent. As a matter of fact, the largest IPO in U.S. history, when it happened in 1999, was Philip American and his wife who founded Web Methods. And they baked Web Methods in the kitchen and basement of their Herndon townhouse for a number of years before they IP'd.
Yeah.
And so if it works in the garage, do it. If it works in the basement, do it.
If you are working in your garage, though, make sure you get out and talk to other people who've done it.
That's the key.
The danger of being in your own space is that's where you are in your own space.
Yeah.
That's the key.
There's a book I'm going through right now, Founder's Notebook, probably 6 or 7 years old, probably 7, 8 years old at this point. Journalist Jessica Livingston goes through and interviews all these, what were startups, and founders of these companies, and explains how they got started largely out of their garage, or maybe a co-working space in the 80s and 90s. Everything from search engines to where Gmail came from, and Hotmail. So even seeing that, right, reading this now, I'm seeing these stories from 15 to 20 years ago are very similar to what we have now. And they're all saying largely the same thing, right? Work from home, save as much as you possibly can, crowdsource through friends and family, and get out and talk to as many people as you possibly can too.
And use every resource you have. You know, Skype is a great resource. FaceTime, great resource.
And there's more than you don't even know.
Yeah.
When we had the first meeting to set up this event, it was with a bunch of senators and Congress people across the street. And we were trying to figure out how to get more gaming business into Pennsylvania. And the representative who runs a fund for if you start a business in a certain entrepreneurial zone they set up, there's a significant tax advantage, which normally doesn't do much for small companies because you don't have income, so you don't have tax liability.
Especially in the States. Yeah.
But you get tax credits, which you can sell to somebody else. And it was like $50,000 available. And everyone at the table's like, how did we not know this existed?
Yeah,
Like,
right?
This is insane.
It's in there, books and books and books.
Yeah, it's nowhere.
That's the Keystone Innovation Zone.
Yeah. Well, this guy knows. Yeah. I did not know that. I was sad. My company was too old at that point to do it.
But hire the best people you can, or find the best co-founders or team that you can, and don't care where they are. I mean, you know, if you're in the gaming business and you need a good developer, somebody who knows, you know, the graphics side of what you're doing, usability side of what you're doing, don't care that they're not next door to you, that they're not, you know, who cares? It doesn't matter. Find the best team you can and use every tool you have available to you to be able to leverage them. Is everybody here thinking about gaming or video or app-based company? Yeah? So do you guys know about the Association for Computing Machinery in a special interest group called SIGGRAPH?
Uh-huh.
So if you don't know about SIGGRAPH, you should check it out, siggraph.org. But the opportunities for gamers right now through SIGGRAPH is really, really huge. And it's a great way and a great forum to be able to communicate with other people who are doing this. And they have a jobs board and an opportunities board that will put you in touch with other folks who are actually in this business, the business of building games. And you had a question.
Okay, spell that, please.
SIGGRAPH.org.
And it's all capitals too.
Well, you can make it
Kind of
up.
funny. Yeah.
You can make it up.
It's my first time I saw this. I'm like, SIGGRAPH? What is this?
Yeah, it's a great organization, but it's really, really focused on gaming. And so
Yeah.
just about anybody who's in this business touches that organization in some way.
And the other one you said association.
It's SIGGRAPH is a special interest group of the Association for Computing Machinery, or ACM.
That's got to be a much older organization.
Yeah, it's been around a long time. I've been a member since 1984.
Yeah, just with the name.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And-
it's been
and-
around for a
Computing
long time.
machines.
Yeah, and schools often have like clubs for it. Like Penn State has an ACM meetup or ACM group. I don't know about Harrisburg, but like a lot of larger schools are very much involved with that too.
Well,
Yeah.
we do here, this was called Maker Club.
Mhm.
We focus on games, kind of interactive media based.
Oh, perfect. And reach out to the tool makers too. Like Unity has evangelists who do exactly what I do, but for just Unity, that game engine. And they're always saying, like, let them know when you have a meetup, because they'll often be able to supply software, or they can Skype in and talk to you people. They can send you free things from time to time. They'll promote what you're doing. So if you're using someone else's tools as well, feel free to promote that or reach out to those companies, because they want to know about what's happening, or invite you out to some of their conferences too.
Any other questions? Yes.
I'm just kind of curious, you mentioned money from the tax credits, and you mentioned some sort of connections to federal funds. And I'm just kind of curious, it's sort of the big case that probably a lot of us remember in terms of public funding for a game is the Rhode Island case, right? That was a disaster.
Oh,
and I'm wondering,
Basically killed it for everybody.
yeah, I'm wondering kind of what's the state of public funding for startup companies, or even just established companies for that matter, in terms of
Still not bad.
game design, production.
It's still not bad, but only for AAA titles. Well, not only, but that kind of money that he got for, what was the name of it? 38 Studios, yeah. He got a ton of free, like, they put him in a building because they wanted to renovate that area of town, and he brought a bunch of jobs.
Yep.
And
Well, it makes sense because he's a baseball
Yeah,
player.
maybe you can get Mike Schmidt on your design team.
Yeah. I know they're trying to bring like engineers from the West Coast, bring them back over to the East, because often people learn here and then, right, go from Carnegie Mellon in Pittsburgh to the Bay Area.
yeah, what people are realizing is that movie fund, that every state has a fund that helps pay
Yeah.
for movies in their area. That's great because they come and they spend a lot of money, and then they leave. So one of the things that we're trying to do and the ESA is trying to do is get part of that fund switched over to gaming, because gaming companies stay. They come and they stay. That money pays itself off over many years of people. But there's a competition to these jobs, especially in larger studios, because they pay well. I mean, you might only work 18 months if you work in a big studio and you get fired when your title shifts.
Yeah.
But you might find another job right
That's
away.
the AAA industry. Yeah.
But they are good paying jobs, so you will get, as a large company, some tax breaks. But smaller groups, through different arrangements, can get free space. They can get free tools, certainly, like tools that have a shelf price of thousands of dollars you might just get for free.
Especially if you have a .edu address, the world is your oyster.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we have a program called BizSpark at Microsoft, and it's for any company, and the requirements are less than $1 million a year. You have to profit less than $1 million a year, which is most startups. Be in business for less than 5 years and be working on software. So just about everybody here, and we give you cloud services for free, all of our software, marketing support, and things like that. I know other companies offer the same thing. And when I had my startup 5 years ago, I would have killed to have had this instead of having to pay for web hosting and virtual machines. So now if you can get it for free, use it all that you can.
We are actually, our primary funding comes from the state, so we are primarily funded from the public sector. And Ben Franklin was actually one of the original, we call it technology-based economic development organizations in the country, founded back in the 1980s. And so I think what we're finding is that the Rhode Island case notwithstanding, he got something like $75 million from Rhode Island. States and especially the federal government are less likely to pick winners and losers at this point, so they're less likely to do large investments in specific entities. But what we are finding is that there are additional entities like us, like Ben Franklin, spinning up across the country, where states are funneling money into nonprofit or to third-party entities who are then, with the purpose of economic development, funneling money into early-stage companies. Early-stage companies, particularly companies in the technology space, are very difficult to fund because you have no collateral. You have nothing.
Yeah.
You have no equipment. You have no location. It's all, most of it is very virtual, so it's very difficult to find traditional financing for that type of a startup. So states are very interested in supporting that in their jurisdictions, and they're doing that through kind of quasi equity based funding organizations. So it does exist, but it's still difficult to get.
Well, on the healthcare side, so if you're creating content, for example, for medical imaging, even if it's a game, there's funding that you can acquire from either the National Institute of Health, some states, etc. But they're small tokens. It's really not what you need to be able to get where you need to go. And they want you focused on whatever your grant making is, not what you want to be able to bring to market commercially. So there's a little bit of a push to try and push you in one direction to be able to meet the requirements of the agency. But the money is there. I mean, you can get it. I work with a lot of startup companies. Some of them are gaming or content related through the NIH's Commercialization Assistance Program, their CAP program. And after 3 years, usually it's like $100,000 to $150,000 for a phase 1 grant. Phase 2 pushes you to about $500,000 phase 3. if you can get that far, is significant funding, but they're gonna force you to develop an 18-month commercialization roadmap at that point, and it might not jive with what you wanna do commercially.
And you might find that just chasing the money takes all the time.
It's a lot of work.
So if you spend 6 months looking for money that you could have been making a product, you were probably better off spending that 6 months looking for making a product. Yeah, I was involved in a very, very expensive, like $450 million venture capital buyout of essentially the tabletop industry. We tried to put together a group to buy everybody who was available to be bought. And then the stock market crashed at the last minute, and it fell apart. But until then, we had spent a long time putting together a team of rock stars and business plans to do everything they needed to have done with the leveraged buyout, and it was fantastic. And all of that went to waste for something that was completely out of our control. Like something totally unrelated happens. So it can take a lot of time to find money. A lot of time to find money. But it's worth it, especially if you get contacts. I know we got probably harping on that a lot, but it is totally true. The value of being at the bar at the right time is nearly infinite.
Yes.
Even if you don't drink. It's still nearly infinite.
Yeah, I'm completely serious. Like, I do a lot of conferences, a lot of traveling. After a while, you don't even want to drink. So I'll just hang out. I drink coffee, I drink water, and I'll just hang out with everybody else. But there's so many opportunities just staying out late and just hanging out, drinking water. You just have good conversations, and that is where I think a lot of the business and relationships happen, right? It's like just getting to know someone casually, not even talking about business, and then you're friends, and then years down the road, you have connections to those people.
Always be nice to everybody.
Yes.
This is just business advice. We're not talking about funding right now. You never know when the person you're talking to, who for some reason might annoy you a little bit, could be your boss or your source of funding in 3 or 4 years. Especially if you work in a fan-based industry, which gaming is. Most people in the gaming industry are fans of gaming. That's not true in every industry. Bankers aren't necessarily fans of banks. That's just where they want to go make their money, right? Or healthcare individuals might not be. Nothing I do. Every day I wake up and think I'm going to invent a new hospital bed. That's not necessarily what drives them. But we are fan-based. So anybody you meet at any time could make the most amazing product or be part of a team of yours. So just be nice to everyone. Yeah, there should be no egos. Confidence is not having an ego. Like you can be confident, but yeah, and you make great friends too. That are awesome people to call when things go south or when things go great. You know, hey, my company just grew really fast. I need an accountant. My consulting firm got hired to go work in Las Vegas in the nightclub industry for 18 months. We were there a week a month because the guy who was in that business used to be in the gaming industry, and he needed someone who could do reasonable business, could write a marketing plan and fill out spreadsheets, and he couldn't find anybody reasonable in Vegas. So I was doing that, and I was working on children's products for Mattel. That was my job for 18 months. It was the bizarre thing, but you never know when you need the help from somebody somewhere.
Yeah.